The Buccaneers might be the most banged up team in the NFL heading into week 2, but I tell you how they can still compete with the Lions. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome into this live preview episode of Locked On Bucs, your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. Don't forget you can subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow along on Twitter. I am James Yarcho at @JYarcho_Bucs, credentialed member of the media covering your Tampa Bay Buccaneers as editor-in-chief of the 813.tv. Here with you every Monday through Friday, along with the everydayers. And for that, I want to share my appreciation for your continued support of the show. One of the ways you can support the show is become a Locked On Bucs insider. You're going to get news, rumors, updates, general thoughts, one-on-one conversations with me via text message, especially during these Bucs games. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes to become an insider today. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions apply. Keys to the game and predictions coming up in a little bit, but let's start with the injury issues that are just not getting any better at all ever. So on Friday, Calijah Kancey, Luke Goedeke, Josh Hayes were still not practicing. They are going to miss Sunday's game in Detroit. Luke Goedeke suffered a concussion in the Week 1 win over Washington, which means that Justin Skule will start at right tackle in his place. Goedeke, along with Hayes, Winfield, and Kancey, have missed practice all week long. Todd Bowles told the media on Friday that they are out. When it comes to Josh Hayes, he's always been more of a special teams contributor. You all know that. But with as thin as the Bucs are at corner, it would have been nice to have him available as a depth piece. Speaking of corners, rookie Tyke Smith missed practice Thursday and Friday with an illness. No word yet on whether or not he'll be able to play, which again is extremely concerning considering the lack of depth at corner right now. It does look like McCollum will be able to go. Todd Bowles said that he still has some tests to pass on Saturday and has not officially been cleared yet, but things have been trending in the right direction for him this week. So I would say I'm about 70% confident that he's going to be good to go against the Lions. He is currently questionable, as is Logan Hall. But with all of that said, I would be concerned that Zion could and will suffer another concussion. I mentioned it a few days ago, but think back to Antoine Winfield Jr. in 2022. He was having a lot of trouble staying on the field because of concussion issues. You certainly do not want to see that happening again. As for the Detroit Lions, they were missing some key players on Wednesday, got a few of them back on Thursday, still missing some as of Friday. Penei Sewell was out both Wednesday and Thursday, as was Ifedi Melifonwu and Marcus Davenport. Now, Kirby Joseph returned in a limited capacity on Thursday after missing Wednesday. He's dealing with a hamstring injury, while Isaiah Williams, the wide receiver, was added as limited with an abdomen injury. He was not available he was not at practice during the portion available to Detroit media. And Dan Campbell told the media on Friday that they're going to try and get Sewell and Davenport out on the field for practice. On Friday, they were progressing well. Their status was still unknown. Sewell is dealing with an ankle injury, and Davenport has a groin injury. As for their status on Sunday, all Campbell said was, "We'll see," which is not a ringing endorsement, but also not ruling them out either. Both would be pretty huge blows to the Lions on both sides of the field. Of course, I got to mention Carlton Davis. He was listed on the injury report with a chest injury, but has been a full participant all week. Right before this show went live, I saw that Penei Sewell was at practice on Friday, but Marcus Davenport was not. Neither was Melifonwu or Williams. I would venture to guess that Davenport and Melifonwu are both out. Sewell has a shot to play if he's able to practice on Friday. But of course, with an ankle injury, you could see that flare up after practice. It may not be strong enough for him to play. They're probably going to list him as questionable, reevaluate, see how he's feeling on Saturday. Might even be a game time decision. You definitely want to keep an eye on that over the weekend. I will keep insiders updated as best I can. There is no doubt that Penei Sewell is one of the best offensive tackles in the game. So if he does not play, that is a huge blow to their ability to protect Jared Goff and clear the way for Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery in the run game. On the flip side, if he does play, will that ankle be strong enough against the speed that the Bucs can offer on the edges? If he is hampered at all or favoring that ankle, Yaya Diaby and Chris Braswell have the speed to get around him. Having, Logan Hall back will certainly help in that aspect. But again, Sewell is one of the best in the league. An injured Sewell isn't nearly as effective, but you don't want to discount his ability even not at 100%. There's a reason he was, I believe, before Tristan Wirfs, the highest paid offensive lineman in the NFL. But if he's out, if he's favoring that ankle, if it hinders his abilities at all, that could be the break that the Bucs defense needs with all of the injuries that they're dealing with on the defensive side of the ball. So definitely an important player to keep an eye on over the weekend. I want to jump into the chat real quick before we move on. Lakita in the chat says, I don't know that I can be this optimistic considering all these guys are out. It was already going to be a tough game. It was already one of the ones that we had circled when the schedule came out as one of the toughest, especially in this opening stretch where the Bucs have a lot of tough games. Things ease up again in week 3 against the Denver Broncos, but then you have a couple of divisional matchups with the Falcons and the Saints. You have the Eagles, you have the Chiefs, you have the 49ers. This is a really tough one, but when we were talking about the schedule, we talked about the Bucs needing to steal one that people don't expect them to win. This could be that one. They go from losing 20-6 in week 6 of last year to losing 31-23 in the divisional round, a game that was tied going into the fourth quarter. This is a Buccaneers team that can go toe-to-toe with the Detroit Lions. The injuries hurt. They hurt a lot, but the Lions aren't exactly the glowing, shining example of health right now either. That could help the Bucs, could help level the playing field a little bit in this one. Paul in the chat says, Bucs offense is going to have to carry the load for a few weeks. Ball control and running are key to squeaking out a win. Bucs offense needs to keep the Bucs defense off the field as much as possible. The running backs need to step up. I'm with you 100%. This is going to be, if the Bucs are going to pull off the upset, it is going to be on the backs of that explosive offense that we saw in week 1. Probably not going to be able to be as explosive as they were against the Redskins. Detroit's defense is much better. Maybe not in the trenches. I mean, they have Aiden Hutchinson, who is absolutely phenomenal, but Washington had a really, really tough front seven. It was the secondary that the Bucs were able to take advantage of. The Lions are not as susceptible in the secondary as Washington is, but I am going to tell you the key on offense and the key on defense to winning this game. That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You're hiring for your small business. You want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users do not visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn, and they're constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even quicker and easier. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. The Buccaneers are 7.5-point road underdogs in Detroit this weekend with an over-under of 51.5 and have somehow fallen behind the Saints at plus 210 with the third highest odds to win the NFC South. Meanwhile, those New Orleans Saints, who are tied atop the NFC South with the Bucs, are 6.5-point road underdogs to the Dallas Cowboys. The Carolina Panthers are 4.5-point home underdogs to the Los Angeles Chargers, and the Falcons are 6.5-point road underdogs on Monday night when they face the Philadelphia Eagles. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Thank you again for making Locked On Bucs your first listen review every day. Defensively, the Bucs need a similar game plan to the one I laid out last week when they were facing the Washington Commanders. I got more on that in just a moment, but the new Locked On NFL is here. Locked On NFL is now 2 shows every day. First, the madman Tyler Rowland kicks off your morning with a double shot of NFL espresso, and then stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. You add in the Locked On local experts, and you get unprecedented NFL insight, hot opinions, detailed breakdowns, all in 30 minutes. It's the new Locked On NFL, and it's twice a day. So make the madman Tyler Rowland and the barber Tony Wiggins your second listen at the new Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. My offensive key to the game this week is you have to keep the offense running through Chris Godwin. I think I've mentioned it on every episode this week, but 8 catches on 8 targets in week 1 for Chris Godwin, with 5 of them coming on third down and resulting in first downs. Godwin is the key for the Bucs this week. Go back to last Sunday and look at Cooper Kupp's numbers: 14 catches on 21 targets for 110 yards and a touchdown against the Detroit Lions. No, I am not saying that Chris Godwin should have 21 targets, although I would love that as someone who has Chris Godwin on my fantasy team. But if he's going to be in that role, that Cooper Kupp role in this offense, you can see the damage that Kupp did against the Lions secondary. He was in motion all night long. I believe Cooper Kupp went in motion the most times any player has in a single game over the last decade. The Rams created mismatch after mismatch for Cooper Kupp to get open and keep the chains moving. That's how Liam Cohen has to approach this game. Mike is going to get his. He had a huge game in Detroit in January. McMillan is going to get opportunities, but the entire offensive game plan has to funnel through Godwin in order to put the Bucs in positive down and distance situations. That opens up Mike Evans. That opens up Jalen McMillan. That opens up the run game for Rashad and Bucky, as well as targeting Rashad and Bucky out of the backfield. Force Dan Campbell to put more of his resources on Chris Godwin over the middle, so then Mike is one-on-one on the outside. It opens up those swing passes for Rashad and Bucky to get them the ball in space. You can really start to carve up this Lions defense and get into scoring range. Now, I'm going to be honest. Funneling the offense through Chris Godwin is going to be the key to the offense for a lot of games this season. So I'm not going to mention it every single week. But this game in particular, and games coming up against high-powered offenses like Philly, like Kansas City, like San Francisco, Godwin needs to be the tone setter. He can do so much to open up the field for all the playmakers around him. If he starts off with 3 or 4 receptions on the opening drive and gets the Bucs into scoring range, then he gets 2 or 3 more opportunities on the next drive. The Detroit Lions had absolutely no answer for Cooper Kupp all night long, so force them to have to do it again against Chris Godwin. Force them to take guys away from Mike Evans and away from Jalen McMillan in order to stop Godwin. Then it's about winning those one-on-ones, winning those 50-50 contested catches. You might see Cade Otton start to get more opportunities over the middle because they're having to send their resources to stop Godwin out of the slot. The whole point in bringing in guys like Jalen McMillan and Bucky Irving was so that Baker Mayfield had more weapons to get the ball to and open things up. Unlike January, the Lions can't solely focus on just 2 receivers like they did. They did it also back in October of last year. It was Mike, it was Chris, and then it was a shoulder shrug. Like, who else are they going to run the offense through if it's not these 2 guys? Now you can run it through Godwin because you have all these other threats. Set the tone early by hyper-targeting Chris Godwin. You know he's going to bring in most, if not all, of the targets that he gets, and that's really going to get this Bucs offense off on the right foot. Defensively, it's similar to last week, but for different reasons. You have to stop Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery in the run game. Turn the Lions one-dimensional, just like you did to Washington, but this time the pass rush has to get home. Jared Goff is not the running threat that Jaden Daniels is. Yeah, he can run a little bit, but a lot of those rushes that Jaden Daniels had in week 1 with the pressure around him would have been sacks or throwaways by a quarterback like Jared Goff. Dan Campbell came out and said that they aren't worried about Vita Vea because they have Frank Ragnow at center. Vita has to make him eat those words. Collapse the interior of the pocket like he knows he can. Force Goff to slide to the right or to the left, right into the arms of Yaya Diaby, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, and Chris Braswell. The Bucs have to be in Goff's face all afternoon to take the pressure off of this weakened and beaten up secondary. Amon-Ra St. Brown is elite. Jameson Williams is finding a groove and is a massive threat on the deep passes and explosive plays, especially without Antoine Winfield Jr. on the field. Todd Bowles is going to have to be very creative, but also very cautious in the way that he gets pressure to the pocket. But these guys that are dialed up, that are going after the quarterback, have to finish plays. If you're sending blitzes, if you're taking resources out of coverage to go after Jared Goff, they have to get there. Otherwise, the secondary is going to get eaten up by these wide receivers, by Sam Laporta, by a running back out of the backfield, because Goff will be able to pick them apart. Jamel Dean, let me talk about Jamel Dean for a second. When the Bucs had a game in Ford Field in the divisional round, Jamel Dean was targeted 4 times when he was in press coverage. All 4 targets went incomplete. That's going to be another important factor in this one. Jamel Dean, well, not even Jamel Dean, Todd Bowles has to have the confidence in Jamel Dean to be able to do that again. That, like Godwin on the offense, Jamel Dean can really set the tone on defense with that press man coverage if he's forcing early incompletions, getting early passes defensed, those types of things. Zion, he's going to have his hands full if he's on the field. Jameson Williams is no slouch. This has to be some seriously complimentary defensive football for the Bucs. The Bucs sacked Goff 5 times between 2 games last year. They need to get close to that in this game alone. Goff completed 69% of passes for 660 yards and 4 touchdowns in 2 games against the Buccaneers last year. Way too accurate, way too efficient, way too much. He threw over 40 times in each game. The Bucs have to get him on the ground and force him to throw the ball away far more. It all starts with shutting down the run and being able to let your pass rush get into the backfield, pin their ears back, and go after them. But they have to finish the plays. If you're getting pressure and not getting sacks, Goff is going to tear them up. He was one of the best quarterbacks in 2023 against pressure in terms of completion percentage, in terms of yards per target, and in terms of touchdowns. You have to get him down. Otherwise, it's going to be a very, very long day for the Bucs defense and Buccaneers fans. Going to jump into the chat really super fast before we move on to all of the predictions. Ben Rosa says, let's not forget penalties. That's another key. Playing disciplined football and avoiding unnecessary penalties that are constantly drive killers. They definitely have to be better than they were in week 1. Luckily, they were able to overcome a lot of those penalties in that game against Washington. You cannot have stupid mental mistakes against a team as good as Detroit. Detroit is right up there with San Francisco in terms of the favorites of the NFC to get to the Super Bowl. You have to play a near perfect game in order to win, especially in Ford Field. You're 100% right, Ben. You cannot have stupid penalties in this game. It is prediction time. Those are coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active users. It's the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports because unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. It's the only real money daily fantasy platform with injury insurance so that your lineups stay in play even if one of your players leaves in the first half and doesn't return. PrizePicks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. It's super simple to play. You just pick more or less than a player's stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. It's not you against thousands of other fantasy players and sharks, just you against the numbers. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL, all lowercase, all one word, on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. Wrapping things up here on a live preview episode of the Locked On Bucs podcast. All of you in the chat, you guys are crushing it. I love you all. Start dropping your predictions in the chat, and I will get to as many of those as I possibly can. But the Bucs and Lions face off on Sunday at 1 o'clock, and the Bucs are 7.5-point road dogs. But it's time to get into these predictions. Of course, Evan gave his on WTSP Wednesday. And then on yesterday's crossover, I did have to give a score prediction. I'm going to try to avoid those as much as possible throughout the year. It's so hard. We record those crossovers on Wednesdays. I want to have as much information as possible before I give my score predictions. But my bold prediction in this one is that the Buccaneers are going to win the turnover battle. In week 5 of last year, the Lions won the turnover battle 1-0. In the divisional round, the Lions won the turnover battle 2-0. That's not happening this time around. Baker was on fire in week 1, played some of the best football we have seen him play since he arrived in Tampa. 80% of his passes were completed, 4 touchdowns, FedEx Air Player of the Week. He was just outstanding. I know he wants redemption for the way things ended in Detroit last year when he threw an interception, on what could have been the game-tying drive. He's coming into this one a little bit smarter, a little bit better, and with a different offensive approach. On the flip side, the Lions have won 6 of the last 9 meetings between these two teams, 3 of the last 5. Jared Goff is 2-0 against Tampa with Detroit. Dan Campbell has not lost to Tampa since joining Detroit. There might be a little overconfidence coming into play on their side, and Goff might be willing to take some risks or make some bad throws under pressure because he's gotten away with it in the past against this Todd Bowles defense. The Bucs are going to win the turnover battle in this one 2-1. My player prediction for this one is KJ Britt. I've talked plenty about Chris Godwin, so you know that I think that he's poised for a big game and a lot of opportunity. So I'm going to put my focus elsewhere. You already know that I'm predicting that Godwin is going to be a huge player in this one. For those of you that watched Inside the 813 with myself and Rock Riley, first off, thank you so much. I appreciate it. But you know that KJ Britt was my dud for week 1. We do studs and duds on Inside the 813 every week. I picked KJ Britt as my dud, and I think he's going to bounce back this week. If the Bucs are going to do what they do best and shut down the Lions' rushing attack, a big part of that is going to fall on the shoulders of Britt. He needs to be dialed in. In the divisional round against the Lions, KJ Britt had 12 tackles when he got the start over Devin White. That was second on the team only to Levante David, who finished with 13. Britt is an incredibly smart, savvy football player. He reads and reacts incredibly quickly. So if Gibbs or Montgomery are getting carries, I expect to see Britt getting to them quickly and preventing those explosive plays. Those two running backs are extremely dangerous. I really need to see Britt get after them. And I expect that he didn't love his week 1 performance, and he's going to look to make up for that this week against a team that he knows he's had success against in the past. He's not going to blitz much, if at all. He's really not great in coverage, which could be a problem if Levante is on Sam Laporta and then one of the running backs goes out for a pass. Think Devin White against the wheel route kind of situations. So if Britt's going to have an impact on this game and be one of those guys that we turn to on Sunday when we go live with the reaction, it has to be because he's meeting these ball carriers at the line of scrimmage, behind the line of scrimmage, or minimizing any potential gains. If the Bucs pull off the upset, it's going to be in large part thanks to the performance of KJ Britt. Let's go ahead and get into the score predictions. I texted Evan right before I went live. I said, hey, are you sticking with the same score? You want to adjust it with the injuries going on? He says, I'm sticking with it. He predicted a 30-27 Lions victory. And I've gone back and forth on this. I know the Buccaneers can win this game. They have the talent, they have the ability, they have the drive and the desire to finally get this monkey off their back. If they lose this game to the Lions, this is shades of the Philadelphia Eagles in the early 2000s for the Buccaneers, where they just could not seem to get over that hump. I said on the crossover with Matt Derry, I fully expect to do another crossover with him again in January. I think these two teams are on a collision course for the postseason for the second straight year. The Bucs have to figure out a way to win this game. It could decide where that game, if they meet in the playoffs, ends up being played. All that said, not having Luke Goedeke, not having Calijah Kancey, you're unsure about Zion McCollum's status. You are thin at corner. You have signed Keenan Isaac back to the team in order to provide some depth. No Antoine Winfield Jr., which is just absolutely gutting in this matchup. I don't think the Bucs have the horses to get this one done. I'll take the Bucs with the points, but I think the Lions come away with a 34-30 victory in this one. Going to jump into the chat and see what some of you guys are saying. We got Ben Rosa saying 28-21 Bucs. Lakita, 35-31 Bucs. Demon Hunter, 35-17 Bucs. Jacko, 33-20 Bucs. Bry says 33-28 Bucs. Wow, you guys have a lot of faith in this Buccaneers team. And look, I'm not going to be surprised at all if I am going live on Sunday with the immediate reaction episode talking about a Buccaneers upset. They have the talent. It's about getting the little things right. Ben mentioned it. You can't have stupid penalties. You have to be able to sack Jared Goff. You cannot afford any 3-and-outs on offense. You have to be able to keep the ball moving, keep the Lions offense on the sideline, and come away with points. I don't care if it's 3. Obviously, everybody prefers 7. You have to come away with points if you're going to keep pace with a high-octane offense going against your beaten-up defense. I did see one more in here. Joseph, this game looks like a blowout to me. Not sure what you guys are looking at. 34-14 Lions. I don't see a 20-point difference in these two teams. I really, really don't. I understand where you're coming from. Again, the Lions are one of the favorites to get to the Super Bowl. The Buccaneers are the 3rd highest odds to win their own division. It's one of those things. If this was a fully healthy Buccaneers, if Calijah Kancey is playing, if Antoine Winfield Jr. is playing, if Goedeke is playing, I'm probably picking a Buccaneers upset here. I just think the injuries are going to be too much for the Bucs to overcome in this one. That is going to do it for this episode of Locked On Bucs. Thank you all so much. Those of you that joined in the live chat, you guys are the absolute best. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube with the notifications turned on. You will know when I'm going live after the game for my immediate reaction. Of course, insiders, I'm going to send you a text, but make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to be a Locked On Bucs insider, it's joinsubtext.com/LockedOnBucs or click the link in the show notes. Follow on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at @Yarcho_Bucs. And please make sure you're checking out everything that we are doing over at the 813.tv. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. Want to thank you so much for joining me right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.